On BBC2, with a drainpipe, a food tin and a kitchen scale, Adam Hart-Davis is riding high on the trail of local heroes.
Hello and welcome to Local Heroes. This week, all my heroes come from the south coast of England. Over there is Southampton, and this is Southampton Water. 10 years ago, I came across here on the ferry to meet the man who invented the hovercraft. He lived in this house in Hythe, and his name was Christopher Cockerell. Christopher Cockerell was born at Cherry Hinton, near Cambridge. As a lad he was an inventive chap, but his bookish dad didn't approve and said that poor Christopher was no better than a garage hand. In 1950, he and his wife started a small boatyard on the Norfolk Broads. It wasn't a great success, and actually it didn't really give him a challenge. He was a born innovator, and he wanted to invent things. Now, he realised that what slows a boat down is the friction between the hull and the water as the hull slides through. And he wondered whether he could lower that friction by introducing a layer of air between the hull and the water. Now, he thought about this for a long time, and then he had a flash of inspiration. What Cockerell wanted was to float his boats on a cushion of air. So suppose he wanted to turn this into a flying saucer, he wanted to put a cushion of air underneath so it would zoom about without any friction at all. But the problem he'd realised was that if the saucer tilted ever so slightly, then the air would come bubbling out and the saucer would come crashing down. His brilliant idea was that he had to contain that cushion of air, and he could do it with more air, with a high-speed curtain all the way round. As soon as he thought of that, he rushed off and did an experiment. And he probably started with a hairdryer and moved on to a vacuum cleaner and an industrial blower. I've chosen a vacuum cleaner. And I've got my air coming out of here through a bit of drain pipe and through a food tin. We think he used a coffee tin to start with. So this is a primitive hovercraft. I'm going to blow down through this onto the kitchen scale here and see how much thrust I get. So I'll just switch it on. Hold the edge of the tin level with the top of the scale, and I've got just about 60 grams of thrust there. Then he took a cat food tin like this, and he actually inserted it into the end of the coffee tin so that there was just a little thin ring all the way around for the air to come out of. And that he thought might make a big difference. Let's see whether it does. Now I'll hold it in the same place, level with the top here, and just look at that. I've got about 240 grams of thrust. 4 times as much thrust just by restricting the flow of air. And he realised what was going on was that by forcing the air to come out of this narrow ring, he was creating that high pressure curtain, which was what he wanted, and containing the cushion of air in the middle to hold the vehicle off the ground. In 1955 he built his first hovercraft. It was powered by a model engine and built of balsa wood. He immediately applied for a patent and took his idea to the government. But nobody was interested, and just to be on the safe side, the government put it on the secrets list. Cockerell wasn't even allowed to talk about it. One of the problems about the hovercraft was it was such a new idea. People had looked at ducks and they'd made boats, they looked at birds and made planes, but as Cockerell himself pointed out, there ain't no hovercraft in nature. And nobody knew what to do with such a weird hybrid beast. Eventually, Cockerell managed to get hovercraft off the secrets list and to raise money to fund development. The first full-size hovercraft, the SRN-1, crossed the English Channel on the 25th of July 1959, 50 years to the day after the first crossing by an aircraft. However, Cockerell wasn't allowed to drive it because he wasn't a qualified pilot, so he went along as ballast. Cockerell had some lucrative offers from America, but he was fiercely patriotic and stayed stubbornly in England. However, his loyalty was never returned. When the Americans paid nearly $4 million for the right to develop hovercraft, Cockerell was refused a single penny. Now, they tell me I can drive this thing across water. In fact, they tell you just have to think of it like different coloured grass. Okay, here we go. I've driven a hovercraft. Oh, I stopped it. Cockerell never made very much money out of his invention, but the idea lives on. They've been up the Amazon and down the Orinoco. They've been patrol vessels on the sand and sea of the Middle East. They've been on the ice and snow of the Arctic. They've been across the Channel, and this one goes every 15 minutes from Portsmouth to the Isle of Wight. Now, I've got a challenge for you. I've made myself a really low-tech hovercraft. This is a polystyrene food tray with a hole in the middle. And I'm going to power it with a balloon. I'm just going to poke the neck of the inflated balloon through that hole in the bottom of the food tray, like that. And then I've got 4 bits of cardboard here at the corners to keep the balloon upright when I put it down on the pool table. And the idea is it will hover its way across the table. Okay, 1, 2, 3, go! Oh. Well, at least it went about a foot. The question is, can you do better? Can you make a really low-tech hovercraft, no electric motors or anything, one that'll travel, let's say a metre over water, the length of your bath? If you can do it, write and tell me. I'll give you details of how to do that at the end of the programme. And if you succeed, I'll show any videos or photographs in the final programme of the series. This is Eastbourne, known to the Victorians as the English Naples. My next hero came to live here to escape the awful pressure of living and working in London. He was best known as Darwin's bulldog and was one of the protagonists in the most famous scientific debate of the 19th century. What's more, he showed that relatives of the dinosaurs are living all around us. He was Thomas Henry Huxley. Huxley was born in London, the son of a not very successful teacher. He started training as a doctor, but couldn't afford the tuition fees, so he joined the Navy instead. He eventually made himself a career as one of a new breed of scientists, professional scientists. The similarities between Huxley and Darwin are really quite extraordinary. They both spent formative years sailing around the world and then made their scientific reputations by writing up their observations. The main difference was money. Charles Darwin was born into a rich family, but Huxley had to make his own way in the world. Then, in 1859, Darwin published his famous book, On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. The ideas in the book slotted neatly into Huxley's own ideas, and he took up the cause to become the champion of the shy Darwin. This is the Natural History Museum at Oxford. And it was in this very room that the most famous Darwinian debate of all took place in June 1860 at the annual meeting of the British Association for the Advancement of Science. Now, the room was huge then, twice as long as this, and also twice as deep because this floor wasn't here. It was like a great cathedral. Now, it was actually a very boring meeting. Huxley was here all week and he almost went home on the Friday. But then on the Saturday, there was a debate about Darwin's theory of evolution by the process of natural selection, and 1,000 people crammed into this room to hear it. On the podium was the Bishop of Oxford, Samuel Wilberforce. He was strongly opposed to Darwin's theory and had a reputation as a slippery customer, so much so that he had become known as Soapy Sam. The session droned on and nobody said anything very interesting, and Soapy Sam stood up and talked about Egyptian mummies and fancy pigeons, and then suddenly he turned to Huxley, who was Darwin's best-known defender, and said, "Tell me, young man, are you descended from apes on your grandfather's side or your grandmother's?" Huxley stood up and said, "If the question is, would I rather have an ape for a grandfather or a man endowed by nature and possessed of great influence, who employs these faculties for the purpose of introducing ridicule into scientific debate, I affirm my preference for the ape. Huxley made Soapy Sam look like an ignorant fool. The argument became heated, tempers frayed, women fainted, and the debate became known as a crucial turning point in the acceptance of Darwin's theory. 7 years later, Huxley made his greatest contribution to evolutionary ideas in this very museum. He was just wandering along, and then on display he saw this bone. It had been found by William Buckland some years earlier. Now, Huxley had been working on birds for a year, and he recognised this as part of a bird's pelvis. However, back in 1824, Buckland, the great fossil collector, had said that the bone was part of the shoulder of a dinosaur called a megalosaurus. Huxley thought otherwise. Back home in Eastbourne, and this is the house he built for himself, he called it Hoddersley, which is the Anglo-Saxon form of Huxley. He began to think about birds and dinosaurs. And the more he thought, the more things fitted into place. The king of paleontology and dinosaurs was Sir Richard Owen. For the Great Exhibition of 1851, he had made life-size models of dinosaurs, like Megalosaurus and Iguanodon, which also had a bird-like pelvis. Owen had put together his Iguanodon like this. Do you see a great big lumbering brute with its 4 feet on the ground and its shoulders low, like a sort of rhino, really? But Huxley realised that if its pelvis was like a bird, then its back legs were on at completely the wrong angle. Let me try and show you. I'll just take these ones off and put them on the right way, and I'll take its tail off while I'm about it, because that needs adjustment as well. Now, the correct angle is actually like that, and like this, and the tail goes on like that, and then you'll see it doesn't look a bit like a rhino. It's standing upright. The shoulders are miles off the ground, and so are the front feet. In fact, if it had wings, it'd be a bird. Huxley took his ideas even further by applying Darwin's theory. He thought that if dinosaurs had bird-like hips, then perhaps birds had actually evolved from dinosaurs. That was a really radical idea, because he was comparing a group of animals long since extinct with another group that was in every Victorian garden. And that was an extremely uncomfortable thought, particularly for Owen. Owen and Huxley battled it out in the papers, the scientific journals, and even in public. In the end, Huxley's camp won through, and the link between birds and dinosaurs was accepted. Huxley was a fighter. He fought for the cash to get educated, he fought for a scientific job, and he fought the establishment views on evolution, dinosaurs, and even religion. He coined the word agnostic to describe his idea that you can neither prove nor disprove the existence of God. But above all, he was a scientist, and he believed that the study of science should be available not just to gentlemen, but to anyone with a passion for scientific ideas. "200 years ago, young ladies were expected to be skillful at dancing, singing, needlepoint, conversation, and also drawing and painting. My next hero lived here at Beauput, a few miles north of Hastings, and she was also an inventor, because she produced a brand new piece of apparatus to assist with drawing, sketching, and delineating. Her name was Caroline Burgess. Caroline Burgess was the 6th child of Knight Marshal Sir James Bland Burgess. She never married and spent her time travelling between the family homes here and in Ayrshire in Scotland. She was devoted to her art to the extent that she made her own drawing pencils from an original recipe, and in 1832 she patented her invention for creating the perfect drawing. Now, what I want to do is to use her apparatus to draw a picture of the back of the house, so I brought one along in my trailer, and you'll see it's really quite simple. You could easily make one of these yourself, in fact. You don't even need the trailer, although it makes a jolly good platform. So I put it on there, I raise the drawing surface, which is glass, and I pull back the back sight and chin rest combined. Then I need to keep my left eye shut so I don't get confused, otherwise I might be drawing with both eyes at once. So I'll shut that with a patch, and I need to extend this to there, because I've measured this up for my arm. And I put my chin on the chin rest, And now I can start sketching. But there's the chimney, and another chimney. One of the things I like about Caroline is that her nephew was a bit of a wildlife enthusiast, and he had more than 100 guinea pigs. He kept them in a place called the Kingdom of Winnipeg, and in the middle of this kingdom was Cabbage Castle. The remains of it is just behind me outside the gate. I'll leave it at that. And then there's just my bicycle here, which of course is probably the most important bit of the whole picture. And the wheel is there, and the monoblade in front, and the handlebars. And then I think that's going to be pretty amazing, just a sort of hint of spokes on the bicycle wheel. Now, let's see how that looks. Ah, fantastic! This picture will hang on my wall as my tribute to Caroline Burgess and her drawing, delineating and sketching machine. Ah, it's great. This is Portsmouth, the home of the British Navy. In the 1790s, we had a bit of a problem because we were at war with France, and all the captains of the ships anchored out here needed instructions from the Admiralty in London, 65 miles away. A chap on a horse galloping as fast as he could took 4.5 hours to get here, which was a bit too slow if there was a battle coming on. My next hero solved that problem by inventing the shutter telegraph system. His name was George Murray. George Murray was the third son of the Duke of Atholl, and as youngest son decided to dedicate his life to the church. But he always retained his boyhood interest in science, and it culminated in his invention of the shutter telegraph system. Murray built 10 cottages between here and the Admiralty building in London. The idea was that from each one you could see the signal put up over the next one. The final cottage was right here on the King's Bastion in Portsmouth, and the next one was up on Portsdown Hill about 6 miles away. Unfortunately, you can't see that from here anymore because they've gone and built Portsmouth in the way, so I'm going to have to nip round the corner. On the top of each cottage, he built a signalling system that consisted of 6 large shutters arranged in 2 columns. Inside the cottages, 2 men manned the ropes, and 2 used telescopes to keep an eye on the signals up and down the chain. Now I've come round the corner to where I can get a decent view of Portsdown Hill up there. And I've erected my shutter system right here. My shutters, you can see, are 3-foot square with a white circle in the middle of a black background, so that it'll be very obvious from up there. His panels were 6 feet square, absolutely enormous compared with mine, but still, this is a faithful model of his. Now, the idea is that to activate the panel, I simply pull the string, and then you'll be able to see the signal. And when I want to let go, you'll see that this weight here makes it drop back to the horizontal position, and then it will disappear. So it's very simple, and because there are 6 of them, there are altogether 64 combinations, and he allotted letters to various combinations. So for example, if I just activate the bottom left one, that signifies the letter L for Lima. Whereas if I pull both the bottom left and the next one up on the left, that signifies the letter N for November. The code wasn't a secret. There were posters of it all over the place, even in the pubs. So anyone in sight of the signal stations could read all the messages, coming and going. Now, I've got my system set up. What I need to do is go up the hill and send some signals down, but the trouble is I can't operate both ends at once. So what I've done is to recruit the combined cadet force of Portsmouth Grammar School, and here they all are. Thanks very much for coming. Now, you know what to do, don't you? Yes? Can you try something out? Give me an A, the first letter of my name.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
There we are, A. Fantastic. Right, they're all well primed. Chris, keep watching in the telescope, won't you? I'll be up there in a minute. George Murray wasn't the first person to invent a telegraph. In 1793, a Frenchman called Claude Chappé had come up with a system. It was rather complex and relied on a huge codebook of 9,999 different phrases. After just a month of use in France, a copy of this codebook found its way to Britain, and Murray got wind of the idea. He was inspired by Chappé's idea and built his own system, which was actually much simpler. And that was the one that the Admiralty put into use. Now, I hope they're still ready at the bottom. What I first need to do is to give them the ready to work signal, which means pulling all 6 ropes at the same time. And the idea is that they then send me the same signal back so that I know they've got it. And now I'll send them a message, and we'll start with the letter P. Yeah, they've got it, they've got P, good. So my next letter is R, so that's the top 2 of these. R. Great, they've got R, so now I want A. That's everything except the first one. They used to be able to send 6 letters a minute. That's 6 letters this way and confirmation. Amazing speed, and messages used to flash up and down from London to Portsmouth all the time. Every morning they would send a time signal just to get their watches synchronised, and they could send that all the way 65 miles in 45 seconds. Extraordinary. Okay, they've got that, so the next one I want to send is W. Now, let's see if they can get that. Yeah, they've got it. Now, the message I'm sending them is actually prawns. That was a secret message among the signallers. It was, the pubs are open, meet you down there, or whatever it was. But by mistake once it got sent back to London, and the Admiralty had a real panic. They thought the French were invading, and then somebody got severely reprimanded. Murray put most of his signal stations 8 miles apart, except for in London, where the smog forced him to build the first 3 stations within 6 miles. Anyway, he was awarded £2,000 for this brilliant invention, and it was put into use all over the country. They built lines all the way to Plymouth and to Yarmouth, but unfortunately he didn't live to see them completed, because on the 3rd of June 1803 he was waiting for his carriage outside the House of Lords when he caught a chill and died. And 13 years later, when the Napoleonic Wars were ended, the whole system was dismantled. During the 19th century, ozone was the stuff to have. It made you healthy if you breathed it deeply by the sea. And the place to breathe it was directly above the sea, preferably standing on a pier. My next hero pioneered a new way of building piers which has stood the test of time. His finest work was the West Pier at Brighton. His name was Eugenius Birch. Birch's engineering career began while he was still at school, where he started designing railway carriages. Then later he went into partnership with his brother, and in 1852 they patented an idea for boring drainpipe holes. Their idea used long poles with a screw thread on the end to drill into the ground horizontally. Then their attention was drawn to piers. The first pier erected in Brighton was a chain pier. Wooden piles were driven into the seabed, providing foundations for 4 cast iron towers, each carrying huge chains from which the pier was suspended. The trouble with chain piers was that they couldn't carry very much weight, so they had to be made very narrow, and that meant not many people could get on them at the same time. What's more, those wooden piles were very, very hard to drive into the bedrock. They tended to get attacked by marine worms, and the whole lot was liable to be swept away in a big storm. In 1853, Birch got a contract to build a pier at Margate, and he decided to use his screw system not horizontally but vertically, and actually screw the piles straight into the seabed. What's more, instead of using just a few huge great piles, he used lots and lots of little ones, and he tied them together with horizontal beams and diagonal ties, and that meant he could build a structure as big as he liked. But the best was yet to come, when Birch went on to build the West Pier at Brighton using screw piles. Just look at this, one of his original piles. This is the pointed end, and here's the screw, you see, going round there and then round here, and it was using this that he actually screwed these things into the seabed. It's all wrought iron and it's getting a little bit corroded, but it has been in the sea for 130 years. Once he'd got those piles screwed right down, he then dropped cast iron tubes over the top. Here is one of them. Cast iron is very strong, very resistant to corrosion, and that would take the whole weight of the pier sitting on the top. Now I'm going to build my own pier. I've got a pile here, and at the end there's a pointed end right there, and then there are these angled bits of iron, so that as I turn it round, it will actually screw its way into the shingle beach. Well, that's the theory anyway. Let's see if it works. Okay, I have to turn it round anti-clockwise. Look, it's going in. Quite slowly, and it's quite hard work. So I'm going to use this device to give myself more leverage. Now all I need to do is to pull on these arms. There is a rumour that he used child labour to turn his screws, but it seems unlikely to me because it's very hard work. Finally, on Saturday the 6th of October 1866, after 2.5 years of screw piling, the pier was opened. It was 1,115 feet long and 140 feet wide at the pier head. Initially, it was completely open to the elements, except for 6 little ornamental houses. The sea drizzle held off long enough for hundreds of tourists to crowd onto the pier, and all the Brighton worthies made speeches. One of them said, "The new pier is like a butterfly upon the ocean, to carry visitors upon its wings and waft them among the zephyrs and the balmy breezes of Brighton." Well, there's certainly breeze, but balmy. The Brighton Examiner said that the pier was artistic and elegant, outrivaling anything of the kind in the country and perhaps the world. Birch went on to build 14 piers all over the country, from Aberystwyth to Blackpool, from Bournemouth to Hastings, every one a masterpiece of Victorian engineering. The simple pleasures of promenading soon gave way to bizarre performances like Captain Camp, the one-legged swimmer, and the amazing Miss Louise Webb with her unique, scientific and graceful underwater swimming, not to mention flea circuses. By the time he died in 1884, his pier was fantastically popular. But unfortunately, 2 world wars have taken their toll of the structure, and the whole idea has gone out of fashion, really. I rather hope it'll come back. And to that end, I built my own pier using his screw pile method. And I'd like to drink a toast to the genius of Eugenius Birch. Cheers! Ah, delicious. I'm sorry, that's all the heroes from the South Coast. See you next time. If you'd like to send me pictures or video of your low-tech hovercraft, write to Local Heroes, PO Box 267, Leeds LS7 2BE. Or for more details, look at my website at www.bbc.co.uk/history.
The cost of a dream home, all the right moves.